Our project objective was to come up with an idea to provide those people 65 years or older with the ability to continue to live a independent lifestyle. After our interviews were completed, our brainstorming sessions were done, we compiled all the information that we needed. What we had left over was a very clear goal. And our key takeaway from this was that regardless of the interviewee, they wanted to enjoy the freedoms that they have always had. And this was irrelevant to their past experiences or their future desires. They wanted to come and go as they pleased. Now, this is difficult when you get older. Your mobility changes, your ability to go up and down stairs, for example, becomes labored. Any number of things. So the outcome that we are looking for is to provide a service to make some of this mobility a little easier for them. The solution that we came up with is a shuttle service. Now, this shuttle needs to be able to meet the needs of our clients. And some of those needs that were identified in the interview process and the feedback were quite often either mobility issues or medical issues. Now, our shuttle service is going to be local. It's going to be very familiar with those surrounding areas, common areas where people go to shop, go on dates, doctor's appointments, even going to be able to service families. If a family wants to go out, the grandparents want to take their grandkids out, that's great. They can handle it. And even for those older couples who want to go out on dates, whether they've been dating for a few months or whether they want to go out and celebrate their 55th anniversary, our shuttle service is going to be able to provide that. Our drivers are going to be experienced with background checks and CPR, first aid certifications. Our shuttle service is going to be able to help.
So to begin our path to prototyping, we first had to create our persona. Our focus was creating a specific person that had specific needs from all of our interviews and all of our respondents' observations. After interviewing each of our respondents and then creating empathy maps, we were able to see some top observations that we would put into our composite persona. Some of these observations included that each respondent enjoyed seeing their family and the proximity to family was extremely important to them. And the other big takeaway, which will come into play for the rest of our prototyping, was that each respondent has their own activities that they really enjoy doing, like outdoor sports or baking, and they each shared that if these activities would be removed from their life, they'd be sad about that because they find joy and comfort in these activities. And that's part of the reason why they have not moved yet to a different senior living facility, because they have the freedom to do these activities whenever they would like to. From there, we were able to take our insights from all of our interviews into creating our persona. We created our persona named Edna, who is a 70-year-old woman who's been living in her home for 20 plus years. She's also looking to age in place and has a daily routine like walking outside and baking each day with family nearby. Just like our respondents, she also fears losing her independence, and that outweighs her fears of aging. After developing our composite persona, we were able to reflect on our development of this Edna personality and really understand how empathy is key. Throughout our interviewing and developing those empathy maps, our team really saw the criticalness of empathy. We all had to place ourselves in each of our respondents' shoes to develop that composite persona of Edna. And we each had to be interested in each of our interviews and really discover what they valued and needed in order to work towards a solution for aging in place. And then lastly, we had to be empathetic to each other as we began this process and valued each of the empathy maps the same. By doing that, we were able to take a step into each of our interviewers' shoes and create our persona, and then finally begin developing an end product that would fit their needs. For building our point of view, we took all of the insights from our interviews and the empathy maps to finally build out that point of view. This took a couple tries, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But we were able to gain and understand some uncovered needs that would really come into play for our prototype. Some of the insights that we first found was that senior adults want to appear healthy and strong despite their age. We also found that senior adults really find joy in their routines, like I mentioned before. And then lastly, we also found out that you can teach old dogs some new tricks. Most of our interviewees learned how to use technology during or before the COVID pandemic. This kind of then led to uncovering the needs that were really at play here. They were mostly focused on senior adults wanting to feel valued, needed, and included, wanting to feel healthy, in control, and independent. And that's the one we really stuck with. Our final point of view ended up being seniors aged 70 plus who desire to age in place need a way to feel independent despite challenges with aging because they find joy, comfort, and fulfillment within their own activities and routines. As I mentioned, building our point of view did take some time and lots of refining and reframing. This was one of the big takeaways our group learned during this stage of the process. We really understood that it's key to be a problem finder. With wicked problems, there's multiple needs, challenges, and values that the user might have, and we discovered that our respondents had multiple needs and values. So being a problem finder is key in design thinking, so we can make multiple point of views to tackle the complex needs of our respondents. And again, we used a lot of refining and reframing to finally get to the point of view that we did end up with. After the feedback we received, we were able to strengthen that point of view to really help us in the next step of design thinking. The next step was working on our how might we statements. We wanted to keep these broad but narrow as we learned throughout the class. In our interviews, a common theme was that the elderly wanted to feel independent but have the access to assistance if needed. One of those areas was transportation, as 2 of our respondents did not own a car anymore. With that, we were able to start brainstorming our how might we statements. We used prompts like remove the bad, question an assumption, identify unexpected resources, and change the status quo. With that, we were able to develop some of our how might we statements you'll see on the side. The one that we finally ended up with was how might we enable the elderly get errands completed but still feel independent. That was the main theme that we saw throughout our interviews, and that was one we were going to carry through until the end of the process with our prototype. We were finally at the stage of prototyping, and as a graphic design minor, I was very excited to build something for our team. So I was able to use the questions that we developed to really shape that prototype. We ended up doing a brochure to really answer all the questions that would go into the service, and we'll explain that in a little bit. But some of the questions that shaped our prototype were deciding if it would be purely website or app-based, wondering if there would be a customer rare side option, if there would be a call-in service with real people or automated. And to answer those questions, we thought it was best just to write it down in our brochure for our respondents to read through during our feedback stage. Some of the takeaways during prototyping will really stick with our team because we have learned so much during this stage in particular. In this stage, we were using how might we statements to really create that path towards our prototype. And then in prototyping alone, we really had some key takeaways that will stay with us. So for how might we all really understood how powerful each of those words are while we are brainstorming with each other. How is extremely powerful because it suggests that there is a possible solution. The might is a very open-ended, and then the we is a collaboration word. And we use these statements throughout our brainstorming and then with our prototyping. And then finally, with prototyping, one of the key takeaways in this stage was that developing a finalized perfect solution would not be the key and not really help us at all. Instead, developing a prototype that wasn't really finalized would give us more honest and immediate feedback from our test subjects. By refining that how might we statement, we developed the brochure, and then developing multiple low-resolution prototypes of our brochures did help us gain perspective without wasting too much time or money on our end. And lastly, for our feedback on the prototype, we had many steps in place to collect that feedback. That included asking our respondents questions, reading the prototype, and then having them mark it up. And we were able to gain some valuable insights that would contribute to our next steps. Some of the things that our users liked included having the ability to have the driver actually accompany them on their errands. Some of the feedback we received was that we needed to make sure the vehicles were wheelchair accessible. And then last, we had a couple good questions raised, which include weather and also certifications for the drivers. In testing, we really did figure out how difficult it would be just to let the prototype sell itself. It was hard for us not to combat the respondents' opposing ideas and insights, but we did really learn a lot just by sitting back and letting their questions come to us and not fighting the urge to sell the product.
Reflecting on our expectations for the aging in place problem set, Group 2 thought this was a very ambiguous problem, very broad by design, of course. So where do we start? A very daunting task, to say the least. Where we don't start is by trying to solve the problem right away, as we found out. But nonetheless, we expected to solve the problem with some sort of physical solution or an environmental solution, some home-based or service-based solution. But these expectations had bias because they came from a young to middle-aged mind. Very different from the elderly, as we found out. For the elderly, priorities have changed over the course of time, and perspectives also changed based on those shifts in priorities. What we needed to do was let the design thinking show us the start point and define our expectations, but it was up to us to keep the bias in check. Surprises along the way for Group 2 came from the empathy maps. And what surprised us was the importance of independence, mobility, standard of living, routines, and the importance of home. With independence, you have the freedom to do as you wish. Mobility, the importance of that is to move around without pain. Standard of living, to continue a way of life. And routines, to continue a pattern of life. And the importance of a home, something that is comfortable, tailored through time, and familiar. Why were they a surprise to us? I think once again, bias comes into play. We as young to middle-aged adults take for granted all the things that the elderly hold dear. What would we do differently? The discover stage was given to us, so that doesn't change, with the broad aging in place but focused on the elderly problem set. The define stage, we thought our independence theme was on track and resonated with our respondents. It's the creative stage that we thought that we needed to go deeper on, specifically the how might we questions and brainstorming. Was it possible that bias was holding us back for a deeper insight? That is possible. And we asked ourselves that based on the prototype critiques that we received. And that leads us into the evaluate stage. Overall, we had positive reviews of the prototype, but it was brought up and that we did see some unforeseen questions and criticism. And we thought that maybe we could go through another create stage iteration and come up with a better outcome. Our empathy takeaway was touched on by Ashley, and we thought it was important enough to touch on it again. Empathy is needed to discover, define, create, and evaluate a problem, and we thought it is critical for design thinking. Empathy is mindfulness, and mindfulness can tell us how we are thinking and why. Empathy helps in the understanding of the respondents to the point of feeling their needs. Empathy can control bias to a certain extent. Bias is ever present, and it's there at a subconscious level. And empathy can help curtail that. Empathy helped us understand the needs of our respondents, the need for validation, that human contact, the need for health, to move without pain, the need for control, to control daily aspects of life. And lastly, the need for independence and how important it is to us. And it becomes more important later in life. Empathy pointed all this out to us. And this concludes my portion of the presentation. I'll be followed by Tiffany to close us out. Thank you.
Thanks, Nate. Next, I'll be reviewing our business model canvas step by step for Silver Shuttle. Customer segment. So we're going to be targeting by age, adults or households comprised of adults aged over 65, and we are going to target geographically due to the nature of our service. We're going to start near headquarters and expand to large cities once we've proven our product. The channels, we're going to do flyers in areas where population is large for our age category. So we are going to do some demographic based research. We'll have a website with a chat functionality and a section to submit questions. And we may hire a call center or leverage employees to focus on calls. Both the reactive calls that are coming in or proactive calls, meaning anyone who's visited our website or used the service in the past, we're trying to ask or discover a need for them to use the service again. Customer relationships, this is going to be primarily self-service. We anticipate most of our interaction is going to be via phone calls due to the age of our target market. And we are going to have an option to do automated services, meaning that month after month or week after week, the customer can use us repeatedly. The revenue streams, it is going to be a per transaction usage-based model. Some of the variables are going to include the number of steps, the distance for the driver, and the wait time. We are going to offer a reoccurring or subscription model that is going to be available. This is going to benefit us. It's going to be a predictable reoccurring revenue. We're going to discount to incentivize the customers to take advantage of the model, but it'll also help the customer as they don't have to think about doing this. This is something automated and easy for them. The key resources are drivers and callers. From a financial perspective, we're going to need a line of credit. And from a pure legality perspective, we'll need help with copyright, brand, etc. The key activities are going to include hiring drivers and callers, hiring a webmaster to assist with website creation and maintenance, hiring someone on the marketing side of the world to help with content creation and promotion. And then also we're going to have to develop a portal or some sort of a buying mechanism for customers to place orders and us to collect payments either via the phone calls or the website. The key partners are, as I stated, we may outsource this to a call center. We are going to need to hire someone to do the background test of our drivers. So because of the age demographic, safety is especially important. So in addition to the background test, we are going to have a training partner that will train our drivers on safety, CPR, those types of things. We also thought it was a good idea to engage with local stores. They could help us with marketing, posting our flyers, and then in turn, we could offer a discount to our clients for going to those stores to incentivize, and it would be a quid pro quo situation. The cost structure would be obviously the salaries, the potential partner fees, and hiring the training partner. Our value proposition, so through our discovery phase and our interviews, we found that the elderly do want a sense of independence via actions such as running their own errands. However, they need assistance, whether it be through pure driving or the assistance with getting in and out of the car, heavy doors, getting heavy items into their house, etc. They need assistance. Our service gives them both a sense of sustainable independence as well as assistance in order to allow them to continue aging in place. The next steps, we're going to further develop our flyer and capability statements. We're going to obviously leverage the feedback that we've collected thus far, test our prototype again, and throughout this whole process, do multiple brainstorming and whiteboarding sessions to collect feedback from the entire group. And then finally, we're going to take our product to market. We're going to start local, test the product in the area, probably go through multiple prototypes, and then hopefully expand to other large cities. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation, and please let us know if you have any questions or suggestions.